Good evening, all, and welcome to another Operations Management Budget and Government Accountability Committee for today, April 19th, 2021. My name is Councilman TJ Clark, and I serve as the Council's Majority Leader and Co-Chair of this committee. And we are joined by our members of the Council, voting members, Councilwoman Shirley Sargent, Councilman John Gale, and I believe that is it. That is that are in attendance of today's meeting. And hello to everyone, to our viewing audience on channel 96 for Comcast Xfinity customers, and also to channel 6032 for our Frontier customers. We do have a packed agenda, and so we're going to move right away with this. Going to take these items out of order if there are no objections, and we're going to start with item number four, which will be our first item, which is Mayor Broning with a company resolution that will authorize and empower the city to amend an agreement between the city and Diligent at the request of the clerk's office to run for a term of 3 years instead of 1 year. And we are here. We have with us our town and city clerk, Mr. Noel McGregor, who actually can speak to this resolution that's before the committee tonight.
Thank you, Councilman Clark and honorable council members. It's my pleasure to come before you. We are always sitting side by side in a sense, but it's good to come before you to just update you on why this resolution was requested. Diligence is the corporate name of the program, computer program software that we are purchasing. It's called iCompass. It's designed to help us with our civic engagement, management of our council meetings and our boards and commission. The reason why this contract was requested for 3 years is that we were able to get a grant that covers civic engagement, and the grant monies needed to be spent within a certain time period. And we decided that the best way to utilize these grants, the grant was for civic engagement, enhancing election and voter turnout and safe elections. So we requested that we negotiated a 3-year contract, and that's the 2 extra years would be paid for by the grant. So it would not be any incomes from the city general funds to pay for this software upgrade. With that, if there's any questions concerning the grant or the program or what will be doing with it, I'm here to answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any questions from my council colleagues?
No.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, and thank you, Mr. Town Clerk. I'm just wondering, did this originally come to us as a 1-year contract, and then I guess I'm just not quite understanding why it's in front of us at this point. Was this some blip the first time that it should have been a 3-year thing right from the get-go?
When we were negotiating with them and we had the funds, we decided to allocate the funds forward. And so the process is that in order to have a contract that runs more than 1 year, it needs council approval. And so that's why it's before you.
So you were able to originally agree to a 1-year contract with them, but then in further negotiation, you decided it made more sense to extend it for 3 years and take advantage of this grant that was available.
Yes, and plus I was also able to negotiate about $14,000 in savings a year.
Oh, well done. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep.
Here, entertain a motion.
Move to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Properly motion by Councilman Gale and second by Councilwoman Surgeon to move this item to council at the next meeting with a favorable recommendation. Any other discussions? Discussions, hearing none. All in favor of this, signify by saying aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any opposals? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and this item is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Welcome.
Just want to also recognize Councilman Nick LeBron, who has joined us as well. Also to our Corporation Counsel, I was going to say Attorney General, Corporation Counsel, Mr. Howard Rifkin, and our Director of Development Services, Mr. I. Charles Matthews. All right. The next item would be actually item number 5, which is Mayor Roney with the company resolution authorizing the city to waive building permits and related fees on a major public housing renovation being undertaken by the Housing Authority of the City of Hartford at 5 locations: Mary Shepherd, 275-293 Bellevue Street, 7-21 Sanford Street, and 123-125 Martin Street, and 31-33 Capon Street. And I know that we have some Housing Authority representatives here. We are joined by the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, Annette Sanderson. And Ms. Sanderson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to come before you this evening. I also have with me this evening our General Counsel, Ben Bear. Sorry, my screen is, my computer's giving me a fit here in terms of my screen, so I'm sorry for fading in and out here. But Ben Bear, our General Counsel, is also with us tonight. Elisa Hobbs, our Development Director, could not be with us this evening. She's actually on another call right now regarding this particular project. She's on a call with the residents, doing some outreach with our relocation specialists and the residents that will be impacted by this development. So I'm happy to say that first of all, let me start with I hope you all had the opportunity to review the packet of information that we emailed over this afternoon to Kevin. It's a PowerPoint presentation, so hopefully you all had an opportunity to review that. Basically what we're doing here, and it's an exciting project, we will be rehabilitating 163 units of public housing located in 5 residential development sites in the north end of Hartford. The biggest development that many of you will be familiar with is Mary Shepherd Place, formerly known as Bellevue Square, for those of us that grew up in Hartford. It's 127 units there, 10 units over on Bellevue Street, 8 units on Sanford Street, and 12 units on Martin Street, and another 6 units on Capon Street. For several years, past 3 years, the Housing Authority has been working to redevelop its overall portfolio because, you know, it's our mission to provide decent, safe, and affordable housing. And so as we take a look at our portfolio and we look at the conditions that exist, we realize that some of them need some capital improvements. Some of them need to be rehabilitated. And as many of you know, as you can see throughout the city of Hartford, over the past several years, we have been in the process of rehabilitating our portfolio. We're proud that, you know, we have the rehabilitation of Westbrook and the rehabilitation of Bowles Park, Nelton Court. So this is the next big one for us. And we're excited about it. We have been reaching out to the residents from day one. As I said earlier, we're in the process of having an outreach meeting with the outreach call, I should say, with the residents this evening. We need, it's an expensive project, you know, and we need your help, our partner, to help us with closing the gap on, you know, some of the dollars involved here. So we're seeking a waiver of the permit fees so that we can invest each and every dollar possible into the rehabilitation of affordable housing units in the north end of Hartford. Some of the units, you know, in the PowerPoint presentation, you'll see the scope of the work that we're performing. We're doing not only interior work in the units, but also exterior site work. We're doing some things to basically upgrade the properties across the board. And this is a unique deal. It does involve some outside financing. We This is something that is long overdue. And this is the next step in our portfolio, in the rehabilitation of our portfolio. Ben, am I missing anything here?
I don't think so. We talked about this a little bit with some members of this committee a while ago when we talked about the cooperation agreement. And I did want to, I know it's in the PowerPoint presentation, but I did want to point out that, you know, once this project is done, it's going to be an income generator for the city where there wasn't income from these properties before.
That's a very important point, very important point. So with that being said, we are open to questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sanderson. A quick question is, how much have you totaled out the exact number of the cost will be for the total number of permits, and how many permits would have to be taken up?
Ben, I don't have that number. This is where Lisa's expertise would come into play. I don't have the exact number of permits in front of me. The cost we're talking about is roughly $470,000, I believe. Ben, is that
between 400 and 500? Yeah, I don't know the exact number of permits either, though. Not the number.
Okay, no problem. And also, too, how long would this project be taking?
As far as once it's closed and construction begins?
Yes.
Okay. The construction period right now is looking at 24 months, possibly extending to 30, just depending on the relocation of residents. We're trying to keep as many folks in their units as long as possible, and then getting people back as quickly as possible. So we're doing a checkerboard relocation. So it's possible that if there are any delays in the relocation, that it could take a little bit longer, and that's where the 30 months would come in. But we're really pushing to get it done in 24.
And another question I have is, what is the relocation process for the Housing Authority residents?
So again, you know, as Attorney Baer made reference to, we're going to try to use we're going to focus on a building at a time. And we have some scattered sites that we may be using in close proximity to the developments that we may be using as, I hate to use the term swing space, but for lack of a better term, as temporary housing for the residents. And then they will have the opportunity to go back. It's very important to us that they understand what their rights are during this process. So we actually are working with a relocation company to explain the process to them. So they're actually on the calls that are occurring this week as well. So, and, you know, pre-pandemic, you know, we had several meetings actually on site in the community room at Mary Shepherd Place, and I attended those meetings. But yeah, it's going to be, you know, obviously first and foremost, we want to make sure that the residents are comfortable and understand what the rights are. Unfortunately, you know, we need to relocate people in order to do this, in order to do a good job, in order to really, you know, make the improvements in the units that need to be made. We can't do them while the people are on site. We need everybody to be safe and to move off site.
Thank you. Open the floor to my colleagues. Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Sanderson, when was the last time these apartments or townhouses, when was the last time they were upgraded or renovated?
Well, the bulk of the units, the 127 units at Bellevue Square, or Mary Shepherd Place, excuse me, were done, oh gee, I want to say over 20 years ago.
Wow.
And they are part of, these units are part of our low income housing portfolio. And again, I don't say this as a criticism, but, you know, we don't get, and it's a problem across the country. You know, housing authorities are struggling with maintaining the overall quality of their units because, you know, HUD is limited in terms of the amount of capital funds that it can provide on a yearly basis to make the necessary capital improvements. So over the past couple of years, HUD has encouraged housing authorities to use different repositioning and refinancing tools in order to raise money, in order to do the necessary improvements. So essentially not using the old methods of just sitting around and waiting, the old method of sitting around and waiting for capital funds to come down. So we've been encouraged by HUD, and we've been working closely with the HUD Hartford folks, and they've been very supportive of this process to try to do this project so we can go outside of the norm and raise the necessary capital funds to make the necessary capital improvements. So it's been, to answer your question, it's been in excess of 20 years. And on some of the other buildings, the ones on Bellevue Street, Sanford, Martin, and Cape, it's been even longer. So they're in need of renovation, rehabilitation.
Yeah. So I do remember, and thank you, attorney, for jogging my memory that you guys did come, a couple of months ago regarding the tax abatement. So thank you for that. It helped me. So basically, all we're looking for now is a little bit more help and just waiver of any kind of permit fees to get the job done.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead, attorney.
The exact number is 537,719 is the projected fees. And that's based on the current plans and specs. Of course, if those changed, the number would change a little bit too, but that was the projected number.
Okay. Oh, one more question.
Councilwoman.
One more question, Ms. Anderson. So with this new upgrade, the rent costs or the rent price will still be the same, and the individuals will be able to move back in once the renovation is done?
That's a very good question, Councilwoman Surgeon. We don't expect the rent to change for the individuals. Obviously, if your income situation changes during this process, obviously there'll be an appropriate adjustment. But for the most part, we don't expect rent changes if everything remains the same for a particular individual.
And there will be the same tenants moving back in once the renovation is finished?
Yes, and hopefully we'll be able to, the plan is to move you back into the same unit you moved out of.
Okay, so they're getting a brand new apartment for the same price. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And any sort of, away from I did a quick look at your PowerPoint, didn't see any sort of outside, little trees and stuff as you do at your newly developed projects to kind of make outside really, really inviting and peaceful. I didn't see that in your project.
Green space?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we hear you. Comment heard. Yes, yes.
Yeah, because as I said, I've toured your other projects and the green spacing, what you guys have done. It makes people may think that, Section 8 or housing is really horrible, but it really makes the project really welcoming and beautified and peaceful. Mm-hmm. So I do hope, in your looking for funds, you would be able to do a little green spacing also.
Okay, thank you.
No further question. Mr. Chair, I'm good.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good evening, Ms. Anderson and Bear. I apologize. I did not have a chance to see this PowerPoint, and I'm not even sure. I can't find it in my email. So if you could send it around again, would greatly appreciate it.
Okay. Okay.
And I guess I'm understanding that council has already approved a part of this proposal. And today is just approving a waiver of permit fees, but not approving the entire spending the entire amount of money and renovating the project and all of that. Is that the understanding?
We are before you today with regard to our request for a waiver on the permit fees. Yes.
So I want to know if
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify something for Councilman Gale. I apologize. So a few months ago, you all adopted a cooperation agreement, I think, as Annette and Ben stated. Mm-hmm. And that agreement speaks to how the Housing Authority is restructuring how they finance improvements at a number of projects going forward. In addition to that, it set a pilot payment program for the Housing Authority which would create revenue to the city of Hartford. The other piece of that in the cooperation agreement, which you all adopted, it said specifically that on projects that the housing authority is on a going forward basis redeveloping, they have the ability to come to the council and ask for a waiver of permits. That was part of the agreement that you all adopted, and that's what they're here doing tonight.
Thank you, Attorney Rifkin. That's a good clarification. It leads me to where I was kind of going, and perhaps you or somebody else can answer. In this cooperation agreement, was there any community benefits agreement incorporated in that, or is there any community benefits agreement to be incorporated in this upcoming project?
You want me to try to answer that?
Yeah, and then Ben as well, yes. Mhm.
Okay. Councilman Gale, this is not a project that involves either, it's not a city development project. It's rather one of the heart of the housing authority, which is an independent political subdivision of the state. And so the issue of whether there needed to be community benefits attached to any project that gets financed going forward wasn't part of the conversation. And I don't know if Ben, you want to speak to that.
Ben, why don't you add something? And then I want to make a point with regard to something else regarding community involvement. Ben?
Sure. Yeah, I think Attorney Rifkin, hit it there. We're a political subdivision of the state. Our charter requires us to provide housing for folks that need a little bit of help, and I think that's the community benefit. The community benefit is also getting more updated and stabilized housing in all of our developments, and then also being able to provide some revenue back to the city for the city to do other things to benefit the community.
And I'll add that we've also Elisa Hobbs is working with the contractor to get them to hire both minorities and local residents. There's a program called the Section 3 program, and our Section 3 coordinator has already met and had discussions with the contractor. We have certain language, and we had certain language in the actual bid documents regarding involvement, minority participation, and then Section 3 participation. So even though it may not be a quote unquote city project and certain city requirements may not attach, but it is our mission, obviously, when we do a project like this, to make sure that individuals, all individuals have an opportunity to participate from a construction standpoint, and that it will benefit the community from both, people that have historically been left out of the process, the construction process, but also city residents as well. Section 3 opportunities for individuals as well as local businesses. So yes, that's my response to the question. And we have, connected the Minority Construction Council with the contractor. We had a meeting a couple of months ago. Things are on hold at this point because of where we are in terms of trying to just move the deal forward and pull together the financing and everything. But obviously, this is a very important project for us. It's a high-profile project, as are all of our projects, and we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to participate in the project and has an opportunity to work on it, whether you be a local resident, minority resident, or a local business.
So I'm a little confused, and maybe you can help out here. When we approved Westbrook Village and Bowles Park, weren't there community benefits? I mean, pretty specific, the standard 15, 30, 15 agreements, weren't those built into those particular agreements? And why is this one different from those?
I think if I may, I think the distinction, Councilman Gale, is that in those cases, we were approving tax abatements.
Absolutely.
Okay. But here I mean, it's not a tax abatement, but it's the city's giving up $537,000 worth of permit fees. And mind you, not that I have any, not that I question the good faith of the Hartford Housing Authority in any way, shape, or means. I know you guys do a great job, but I am just wondering why we shouldn't have built into this. I mean, kind of from a council perspective, it seems like anytime the city's going to give a benefit to somebody, that we want to make sure that we're getting getting City of Hartford people employed, getting minorities employed, minority contractors employed, the standard stuff that we look for from in all the tax abatement deals and all the tax fixing deals. This one's not a tax abatement or tax fixing; it's a waiver of permits. But it seems like there's not much difference.
The only thing I would just mention is in this case, we're not talking about a relationship with an actual developer. This is a relationship with a political subdivision.
A political subdivision that's going to go out and spend $46 million. That's an awful lot of money.
What I'm saying is that the touchstone of our insisting on some community development language is in the context generally, or not generally, but I think in all instances of some developer working on investing money in a project.
Yeah, but okay. I mean, I hear you, Mr. Corporation Counsel, but I also reflect on the fact that somewhere approximately $46 million is going to be spent, and that's going out to somebody. And I think from my perspective as a Hartford City Council member, I'd like to know that some of the people that are going to get that money are people who live in the city of Hartford and people who work in the city of Hartford and are disadvantaged communities traditionally. That's, it's a lot of money.
Can I just ask one question? And this is Mr. Beer. Wasn't when you guys came before us revenue pilot program, it was unusual for the city and the housing authority to get into an agreement where the housing authority is actually sending the city back revenues? Isn't that something that was unusual at that time? That's never been done before?
It certainly hasn't in anybody's history that's on the Zoom tonight. So, I mean, a lot of the cooperation agreements had been in place since like the 30s and 40s. So it's been a long time.
But this particular agreement that we passed a couple months ago, this was a little bit different from the actual Westbrook and the other projects. This one was a city came into an agreement with you, a corporation agreement, and you guys are actually, and again, I can't remember the amount, but the housing authority is actually, sending some revenues back to the city.
Yes.
Right. It's about $82.5 a year on this particular transaction when it's done.
That's what I thought. So
as opposed to nothing.
That has been over the last several years. The city has not been collecting any money in these properties at all. This is, all for property tax rolls. So I did commend the mayor at the time when he sat down with the housing authority and came up with that agreement, so raising, $500,000 of waiving the permit fee in consideration that I know the housing authority, from looking at your other projects, when I go and visit the other projects, majority of the people I see working on the projects are minority subcontractors. So I do expect the same commitment here. So it may not be in some kind of writing or agreement, but I do believe the housing authority, which is a quasi-semi City of Hartford organization, will be committed to hiring the City of Hartford residents and contractors.
Absolutely. As I stated earlier, this is a Section 3 project, and we're committed to hiring local residents, local businesses, and minority minorities and other disadvantaged individuals as well. Absolutely.
Considering
That's what we do. That's what we do.
Thank you.
What we've done.
being that you do follow the guidelines of HUD, aren't you required by the federal government as regarding minority contractors, the certain set-asides, aren't you held to those standards?
Yes, as part of this, as I said earlier, it's a Section 3 project. Absolutely. Whenever we spend federal funds, obviously there are certain guidelines. We're proud of the work that we've done in terms of minority and city resident involvement in our past deals. If you look at what the work that's been done over the past 5 to 10 years, we have a history of making sure people are involved.
So in theory, you can basically argue that there is even though the city has not created a community benefits agreement, there's already one baked in based upon what the federal government outlines.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
No.
The chair entertain a motion.
Motion to send back this favorable approving the permit waiver for the I don't have my agenda in front of me. But favorable recommendation back to council.
Motion by Councilwoman Surgeon.
I'm a little reluctant, as expressed. I mean, I would love to see what Section 3 specifically requires of the Housing Authority. And again, it's not that I doubt the good faith, and to Councilwoman Surgeon's point, I think we expect this of the Housing Authority, but I don't know that as a council member, I should just be relying on past conduct and not having things put in writing. I mean, it sounds to me like there's no issue with having some writing, that the Housing Authority would clearly be able to meet all the minimum standards that we ask all these other folks to meet. So I'm happy to pass this forward, but I would like us to get some more information before we do so. So I'm not seconding Councilwoman Surgeon's motion for favorable at this time.
Quick procedural question, Mr. Corporation Counsel. I can second the motion. Is that correct? I don't give up my rights as chair.
I don't think you do.
That's correct. You, as a member of the committee, you can second it.
Okay. So I second the motion. So a motion has been made by Councilwoman Surgeon, and it's been seconded by myself, Councilman TJ Clark, to send this item back to council with a favorable recommendation. Any other discussions on this matter? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposals? One opposal. Councilman Gale. Any abstentions? Councilwoman Rosado, Council President Rosado abstains. The ayes have it. This item is passed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I think Council President, you should.
Yes, recuse myself, not abstain. I'm recusing myself.
Abstain from the vote.
Thank you, Howard.
All right, let the record reflect that Council President is not abstaining, but she is recusing herself from the vote. All right, this item has passed. Thank you very much to Ms. Sanderson, Attorney Bear, for coming on and giving a very good presentation.
Thank you. We look forward to sharing our updates as the project moves along. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to our continued partnership with the City of Hartford.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, moving forward, we're going to follow now the agenda as it is scribed. Item number 1, Mayor Bronin with a company resolution authorizing the City of Hartford to enter into a 10-year tax abatement agreement with Hartford Assisted Living LP to support affordable rental housing located at 90 Retreat Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut 06106, known as the Retreat Assisted Living Facility. And we have Tone Nelson from the Department of Development Services here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'd like to present to you and request your review and favorable recommendation for 10-year tax abatement for the property known as 90 Retreat Avenue, also known as Hartford Assisted Living. Hartford Assisted Living is a congregate living facility for senior citizens who earn roughly 50 to 60% of area median income. It currently has, there's 100 units there ranging in size from 1 bedrooms to studio apartments. I did send over a copy of the PowerPoint presentation created by the applicant themselves with the hopes that they would be on board during the meeting to discuss the property itself from their perspective. As you all know, the abatement was approved by the committee on March 9th, and the committee approved a 10-year abatement under the Municipal Code of Ordinance 32-12. Just for the listening audience and those folks who cannot attend, I'd like to kind of summarize or read over the resolution or the proposal put forth before the committee for your vote and recommendation. So the term of the abatement is for 10 years. It shall apply to taxes beginning July 1st, 2021 through January 1st, 2031. So it's a 10-year agreement. The owner will be required to pay, or the property owners, yes, will be required to pay $650 per unit per year for the first 5 years. After the second 5 years of the abatement, they'll be required to pay $800 per unit. The 100 units shall remain affordable as prescribed by the low-income housing tax credit agreement for the term of the abatement. And the owner will also be required to reinvest $540,000 in addition to maintaining the facility. During the construction period, Councilman Gale, they will have to comply with the Hartford Affirmative Hiring Practices guidelines under Article 12, Section 2-680. The Tax Abatement Committee has also approved the fact that any monies raised as a result to make those improvements be exempt from the 10% clawback. The abatement as general standards shall not be unassignable without approval of the council and the mayor. It will automatically transfer to any financing company, so bank who provides a mortgage, if for some reason the current owner defaults on the mortgage and the property has to be acquired by the bank as a result of such. That's done in order to encourage the lenders, if there are any, to provide funding to make some of these improvements if required. And of course, if the applicant or Hartford Assisted Living Limited Partnership should default on the agreement by any means, then the agreement is canceled. And we've added something different this time, which is number 12 of the resolution that says if they fail to execute the agreement within 90 days after we've submitted the agreement as our final revision, final draft for execution, the agreement may be rescinded by the city. That was added as a result of some of the other agreements that we worked on in the past, where it's taken a lot longer for these things to be accepted and executed. If there are any questions in general, I'd be more than happy to entertain those before I go on to any particulars about the project, and not necessarily the project, but the impact of the abatement on the general funds.
Councilman LeBron.
Yeah, just in general, it's not about this project in particular, but for these assisted living facilities, is there generally a tax abatement what is I guess the question I have for assisted living facilities, do all of them have tax abatements connected with them?
Councilman, let me say this. I can't speak for all. I don't think every last one has an abatement associated with the operation of the property. We do have several where they are elderly housing facilities or assisted living facilities. In this case, this particular development is licensed by the state as an assisted living facility. So as part of the requirement, they provide other services. I think you may be aware that they provide meals, prepared meals. They provide a nursing staff, a nurse on staff around the clock for the most part, and other folks, services and personnel to assist the residents of the building. So my general question, I'm sorry, Councilman, but my response would be no, not all the properties that are assisted living facilities within the city have an abatement.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, I have another question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The second question is there any kind of conditions associated with the tax abatement? Let's say, for example, I'm not saying this particular assisted living facility, but let's say assisted living facility A wasn't holding up their grounds in terms of services and overall health and condition standards. Are there any kind of associations associated with performance and the tax abatement?
Those things are generally policed by the state or the licensing agent.
Okay.
So what we will do is we'll conduct inspections on a rotating basis, where we'll go in and inspect the units to make sure the units are being properly maintained in the facility itself. However, in terms of the services and the level of those services provided, that's generally enforced by the licensing agency. In this case, that would be the state of Connecticut.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions regarding was this building had any past due taxes? Are they current in their taxes?
The buildings had an abatement since it was opened back in 2005. Okay, it did expire in 2020. They had the one lapse or gap year where they were responsible for paying full taxes, and they have met their obligations. But if they did not, of course, we wouldn't be presenting this abatement to the committee or to council for approval or for review. So they are current on taxes.
Great, thank you. And in this abatement, in comparison to the one that was done in 2005, what's the difference? Is there any difference? Is it, are they paying more per unit? Just a little explanation.
Yes, Councilwoman. They are paying more. So in the past, they paid $450 per unit, which is basically $45,000 a year. Under this abatement, they're going to pay $650 a unit, which is $65,000 per year. Which basically says, hopefully you received a copy of the summary and analysis that we performed in the Division of Housing for your use and perusal.
I apologize, but I don't have it with me on my computer.
Okay. So under the original agreement, 84% of the taxes were abated. Under the current agreement, that's 78% of the taxes will be abated over the course of the 10 years. The other difference is there is a 10-year agreement versus a 15. So we've increased the amount of taxes they have to pay. And if you do the math, it's somewhere at about 100%. And we've shortened the term from a 15-year term to a 10-year term. And now it was done originally at a 15-year term to run coterminous with the tax credit compliance period, which is some of the funding they use in order to develop the project initially.
And so basically and again, my lack of development knowledge. So basically, this new agreement is just basically to keep them operating over for the next 10 years.
It's to provide them with assistance to maintain the facility, yes, and continue to provide the services that the building has become, the residents have been accustomed to, and the state requires. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to drive by it. If you do, please do.
I have not been there in about 4+ years.
Okay, I can say.
I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead, sir. I apologize.
I was going to say, well, I've driven by it. I've had our inspectors from the Division of Housing have gone into the property to conduct inspections, and the property is very well maintained, according to the inspectors who have gone to visit the properties and inspected. I can't remember the exact number of units, 15 to 30 units, found no deficiency in either of the 30 units that they've conducted inspections in. And if they did, they were very minor. So when I say minor, maybe there was a loose door handle. And I can provide you with some more information. So no, building's in great shape. They've done maintaining it. And I think partly because of the management team and generally interested in maintaining this property for the purpose of the residents. Two, it's also they're required to maintain the property to a certain degree under the tax abatement agreement, and also as a licensed facility by the state.
Again, when I used to go there visiting a friend, the building was properly maintained. The residents the ones I've met over the years were extremely happy. I would definitely say they've done a fantastic job in taking care of our most wonderful young people that live there.
Yes.
Just one thing I just have to compliment your department, and that is making a new change in the tax abatement agreement that the documents need to be signed within 3 months. And so I want to compliment you on that. And I think it's going to go a long way to keeping, when we do approve of a tax abatement agreement, it's done, quickly so we can start getting the funds rolled in.
Thank you.
So again, I want to commend you and thank you very much for that new change.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make an amendment or recommend an amendment to the current resolution, which is item number 5 in terms of the amount of money that needs to be reinvested in the property under the agreement. Initially, we received the application about a year prior to the expiration of the existing agreement, of the former agreement. So some things have changed, and instead of Hartford Assisted Living Limited Partners be required to spend $5,443 per unit, they would like to ask that the committee consider and approve a capital budget of $3,000 per unit. In other words, $300,000 over the next 3 years be invested in the property as a result of some forecasts that may provide an impediment to them reaching the full requirement of the $544,000. Now, I have looked at the capital needs assessment based on what was recommended and what they've agreed to do. I'm comfortable introducing this amendment and in supporting the request for a reduction in the capital expenditure budget over the course of 3 years. However, I defer that decision to you guys.
Can you give us that amount again?
Sure. Initially, they were required to spend $544,379 in terms of capital improvements and repairs or capital expenditures. They've requested that they be required to spend $300,000 in capital improvements and expenditures over the course of the 3 years. So it's gone from $5,443 per unit to $3,000 per unit, which is what the program, the policy requires for units that are single units, single bedroom units, or efficiencies. They are required to invest $3,000 per unit.
And I'm assuming this is because they don't want to be out of compliance.
That's correct, Council.
That's, Elizabeth is on from CRT. So can you speak to what Tone had just mentioned to us?
Sure. That's exactly it. We know that the program requires for elderly senior housing a $300,000 contribution for capital expenses, $3,000 per unit for elderly buildings, and the fear is that we would fall out of compliance. My colleague Heidi is here as well. I don't know if she's the manager of the retreat, so she may have more to say.
Heidi, it's good to see you. See you again. It's a long time no see. But yeah, can you just weigh in as to the conditions there and why this requested decrease would be beneficial to you all?
Yes, good evening, and thank you, and nice to see you as well. So we want to go to the threshold of the $3,000 again, because that is in compliance. We have some concern that we are in unprecedented times. I can share with all of you and have an open invitation to have any of you come to visit the retreat. I was part of the original team that opened the retreat. I've been there for 16 years and it looks just like it did when we first opened. But there is concerns that we're going to have some unprecedented times moving forward with census and the subsidy at the retreat is for individuals that are it's for subsidized housing. And so we're a little concerned about what that's going to look like in the elderly communities moving forward. And so we want to obviously stay in compliance, but with the unprecedented time in the future, not clearly seeing what the world will be like in a few years, we are somewhat concerned with that. And we would like to stay within that $300,000.
And if I may, Councilman, Mr. Chair, they receive a subsidy assistance through the RAP program, which is a state-funded program. Now, I know that the state at times does not have the same level of incremental increases as some of the other programs, in addition to the fact that the state at times and some of the other facilities that we're involved in has not renewed the subsidy when a tenant has moved out. So basically they put a freeze on it and said, okay, if this person should leave, you lose that subsidy altogether. And since we're talking about 50% AMI, 60% AMI residents, you can imagine that if a person is required to spend 33% of their income toward rent, that average rent will go down, and I'll make up a number, from $700 to $400, which will also just put some financial hardships, or I shouldn't say that, challenges before the ownership, and in terms of maintaining the facility to the degree in which they do today.
So this is only for 3 years, right? And then they go back to the original expenditure of $544 after 3 years? No, because what they have to do is they have to spend the $300,000 within the 3 years, Councilwoman. Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's up to them to maintain the property. We will not put any requirements on in terms of capital improvement expenditures. What we will do is require that they maintain the facility to meet code compliance through the of the city and the state. So if they, for example, if we should conduct an inspection there and we notice that the heating system's not working properly, we will require that they either repair or replace the heating system based on someone's professional opinion.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure I'm understanding this.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from my colleagues? Councilman Gale.
One comment and maybe a question. Just to Councilman LeBron's earlier question, from my understanding, in the world of assisted living, there's private pay assisted living, and there are subsidized assisted living facilities. This is a subsidized assisted living facility, not a private pay facility, and hence there's good policy reason for the city of Hartford, from my perspective anyway, to be involved in helping, because but for our participation, as well as the state's participation, this form of housing would not be available for folks. And I remember a time when it was not available for folks, when private assisted living facilities came online, and there was no subsidized assisted living facilities available for folks that couldn't afford it. So this was a very welcome addition to the housing. I will also say, as Councilwoman Surgeon has mentioned, in my law practice, I actually have had clients. I have a client right now that lives there. I'm over there on a routine basis, and it's a phenomenal facility. It's very well maintained. Kudos to you all for doing the phenomenal job that you do. Last thing, sort of maybe a question, I'm not sure. I kind of got the impression from what you were saying earlier that under all of your other regulatory requirements, you are responsible for putting a certain amount of money in capital reserves every year and spending it for capital. So despite the fact that after 3 years, our resolution goes away, you will continue to have some obligation. And is that obligation the $300,000 per year under any circumstances?
Heidi, would you mind?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you, sir. In regards to clarifying that the retreat is a subsidized assisted living facility. We are one of 4 in the state of Connecticut. We're actually the only one in a local city. And so I thank you for clarifying that. That is very contrary, however, to what most people recognize as assisted living being proprietary. If it wasn't for the retreat, 96% of our folks would be in skilled nursing facilities. So I really appreciate and I thank you for that clarification, because I am honored to give the retreat that opportunity to Hartford residents. And so I thank you very much for offering that clarity as well. As it relates to the capital needs improvement, it's an ongoing process to ensure that the building is kept up to the standards that we're required to. We've had 100% compliance in our spectrum audits, our public health audits, our building audits. So we have remained in compliance. And so we will continue even past that $300,000 to invest in the property so that it's maintained from years to come. I hope that addresses your question.
And I'm sorry, if I may, Councilman, under their partnership agreement, operating agreement, they're also required to deposit, I think it's $800 and some odd dollars a unit per year into the reserve account. Now, this reserve account can only be drawn from, if I remember correctly, Heidi, at the approval of, is it CHFA, who has to approve the draw from the capital improvement account for specific use. So in other words, they can't say, okay, we're running low and we want to I'm making up an example. And Heidi, please correct me if I'm wrong. They said we want to give everybody an increase in pay. And this year we're going to run a little short, so we're going to take this money out of the capital reserve to cover our personnel costs. Now, so they may be able to take money out of the reserve account with the approval of CHFA to make capital improvements or repairs, and i.e. Replace windows, redo a roof, so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And I think that's important for everybody to recognize that the structure of these programs is such that the management is required to put aside money on a yearly basis into a capital reserve so that you don't find yourself suddenly in a situation where you've got delayed maintenance and deferred maintenance, and now it becomes catastrophic. So the goal of these programs is to keep the property up for as long as we possibly can.
Yes.
Quick question.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So since we're making an amendment, so can we also say in that amendment that, we do the 3 years, 300,000 for the capital expenditure, and then maybe every 2 years they file a report with the city, on what they have in their reserves for capital improvement?
If I may, Councilwoman, Surgeon, We receive the financial statements annually
Mhm.
as part of our requirements, the submission requirements, to make sure that the property is still being, is one, viable, and two, the money that we are providing in terms of an abatement or reduction in taxes is being used according to the program. So we annually receive a financial statement, and we look at the reserve accounts. If you would like, I could provide that, and if you want to make an amendment to the agreement.
No, sir, I'm good. I didn't know that they annually have to send that to you.
Yes.
So this is the reason for the committee meeting. We're all learning. So now that I know that, that this is something that they have to send to the city. My question for the city is, is who reviews it, and do you send back a letter of saying I have received it? Everything is okay. What is your process when you receive it and reviewing it?
Yeah, so what we annually send out a notice to the contracted properties and provide us with the financial statements along with other material. So we'll ask for rent rolls to make sure that the rents are affordable, to make sure that if they have a subsidy, that the tenant portion is no more than 30% of that person's reported income. We will also ask that they provide us with an explanation or a narrative along with any supporting documents as to what they've done with the funds, the reduction. And in some cases, they say we were allowed to keep the rents low as a result of the abatement to continue to maintain the property and its condition. In other cases, they will say we use that money to replace a roof. So they're either physical changes that they were improvements they've made. Secondly, when we receive the financial statements, those are usually reviewed by me. Just to give you some background on myself, I've been involved in the real estate business for over 30 years. I've not only owned real estate, I've created investment partnerships, and I've done things on the level of syndication. I've managed multi-unit apartment buildings. At one time, I had 450 units under my management. They were all subsidized units, either through tax credit, HUD supported subsidy payments or HAP agreements, or they had home money involved. So my point being is that I'm familiar with what the financial statements are and the way I look at it and what the reporting. So we review those, and if they seem to meet the spirit of the agreement and comply with the agreement, and we don't see any red flags, then we generally just submit a request to the tax collector to adjust the taxes based on the agreement. Now, in cases where we see something that we are curious about, we will inquire, and we may ask for further explanation as to why some of these things exist or happened in that fiscal year.
Thank you for the education and learning that process. All right, I'm good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Want to also recognize Councilwoman Bermudez, who's a voting member, and I believe she had a question.
Thank you, through the chair. Most of my questions have been answered, but I was just curious when it was mentioned earlier that there are 4 different sites in Connecticut and we're the only city. I was wondering what other locations?
Sure. So I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, Heidi, can you please address that for me?
Yes, thank you. I apologize. So there are 4 subsidized assisted livings in the state of Connecticut. We do not belong to one another. And so those 4 sites are ourselves. In Hartford, we were the first urban built. The other is at Herbert T. Clark, which is in Glastonbury, which is run by the town of Glastonbury. A third is Luther Ridge, which is in Middletown, run by the Lutheran Association. I think it might be a little off in the title there. And then the 4th is in Seymour, which is called Smithfield Gardens. And those are the 4 pilot programs within the state of Connecticut that are the 4 subsidized pilots.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Gale.
Yeah, and Heidi or somebody, you can probably correct me on this, but Hartford also has another assisted living facility that is subsidized, maybe through a different program, but Emmanuel House at 15 Woodland Street, quite a few years ago, I was on the board when this happened. I was part of the board that made it happen. We took the first 4 floors of Emmanuel House and turned them into something which I think is very comparable to the retreat. It's not the entire building because the rest of the building is still low-income housing for the elderly, where it's independent living, totally independent living. But on the first, I think it's the first 4 floors, Emmanuel House also has. So Hartford's very well positioned. We benefit from the beautiful facility that the retreat maintains, but also Emmanuel House maintains a very similarly very nice facility.
So what Emmanuel House is very similar to us. It's probably the closest, as you've stated. We are considered a different kind of bridge of the pilots because Emmanuel was kind of erected with those 4 floors that you suggested with a different kind of funding streams. The four pilots, but they're, for the most part, they're the same. The 4 pilots were created with the ability to have the Connecticut Home Care Program for elders integrate with some types of tax credits to then create what are considered the 4 pilot projects within the state. We are comparable and similar to Emmanuel, but we're just under kind of a different umbrella, I guess is the best way to suggest it, but very, very similar, sir. I'm a little partial to the retreat though.
Okay, I just want to say as well, I think the retreat is a very well-established organization. Is a beautiful looking building, and then they have some of the greatest staff in the city, serving a tremendous amount of Hartford residents. And so I do support this endeavor, this resolution here. Is there a motion on the floor?
So move. Favorable recommendation back to council.
Second.
All right.
We all love it.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Oh, hold on, not yet. We haven't finished.
Haven't voted.
I'm sorry.
Motion changed.
The motion has been made by Councilman Gale with a favorable recommendation. I would say the second was from Councilwoman Bermudez. Are there any other questions regarding this? Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I just want to point out, I think the motion should accept the amendment that Tony was speaking of.
Yeah, happy to amend the motion to approve. Motion to approve and send this back with a favorable recommendation with an amendment reducing to $300,000 the capital expenditure requirement set forth in paragraph 5 of the resolved clause.
Motion has been made with the amendment regarding paragraph 5 in the resolve clause to set that to $300,000.
Okay. We'll second it.
All right. This motion has been made and seconded by now Councilwoman Surgeon on the amendment. Any other discussion regarding this? So that we're clear. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposals? Any abstentions? Hearing none, seeing none. The ayes have it. This item has been passed with the amendment to the next council meeting with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you for your support.
You all have a wonderful day.
Thank you to you as well. Thank you.
All right, moving on, the next item on the agenda, and I just want to do a time check. It is 6:38 and we do have a public hearing at 7 o'clock, which we need to start that promptly. So more than likely, we may not be able to get through our entire agenda. But the next item is item number 2, Mayor Brunning with accompanying resolution authorizing the city to execute the terms of a tax lien sale at 20 Sergeant Street with 20 Sergeant Street LLC owned by Mass Qatari. And we do have Aaron Howard that's here to present.
Good evening. Thank you, Councilman Clark. Good evening, commissioners, councilmen. I am here today just to present the tax lien that is being re-proposed for 20 Sargent Street. I am joined here today by Charles Matthews is on the call to answer questions as well as Max Guattari, owner of Express Kitchens and the developer in this particular request. If you recall, back in 2019, late in 2019, council did approve a tax lien sale for 20 Sargent to Express Kitchens, with providing a tax lien sale about 40 cents on the dollar for the 2010 to 2017 tax liens. Unfortunately, due to COVID and some other things that have transpired over this past year, the city and Mr. Guattari have not been able to come to terms with the original proposal, a lot of it having to do with COVID and some of the existing tenants. So Mr. Guattari came back to the city over the past few months, been working closely with our team to come up with a new tax lien sale. For the purposes of the group, the major changes are including the 2018 and 2019 tax liens, and we're proposing to do the sale of those liens at 60 cents to the dollar. And in addition to that, we have actually requested Mr. Guattari to work with us with the existing tenants of the 20 Sargent Street building to freeze their rental payments for the next year, as this request was in light of COVID and other items. Max is here today. He can share a little bit more about it. But I would also just point out that, again, this would be 40 cents from 2010 to 2017, 60 cents from 2018 to 2019. Back when we did the original deal, there were some concerns over the 5-year payment term, as well as what Mr. Guattari did with the property over the 5 years. That has remained. There's a development, there's some restrictions there over the first 5 years. But again, I think the intent of Mr. Guattari is to redevelop this property in such a way to really just reactivate the tenants that are there and to support future business at this site. And so we're supportive, and I guess that's it. And if you have any questions for PDS and or Mr. Guattari, we're here to answer.
If Max would like to address the committee, you have the floor, sir.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to address the committee. So I have been on Main Street for now 35 years going, and I've been in the North End owning a lot of different endeavors, and we have contributed to Hartford, and I'm a diehard Hartford guy. I believe in Hartford, and we keep investing in Hartford. I have done a couple of these type of things with the city. So one of the examples is the 3080 Main Street, where we have developed the whole Express Kitchen franchise. Started out from Main Street and I think Mayor Mike, and at that time Sandy was the city manager, and we had done that deal. And then since then we have done Tower Avenue at the corner of Main and Tower. And so we have done a couple of these things. Our intent is very simple. We always look for good business opportunity, but at the same time, good community work is the bedrock of who we are. And that's how we have behaved in the city. And that's what I believe that in this particular project, city has not collected taxes due to existing owners' business issues over there for almost 10 years. I would like to put it back on the city tax rolls, which is our first objective. Our second objective over here is to stabilize the building. City and the community has made some serious investments on this building. It's a beautiful building it has made, but it needs some serious maintenance work. And the third thing is we tend to, most buildings that when we go in, we try to find a way to stabilize it, but also upgrade it. So for example, all of Star Hardware, all of Express Kitchen, all these buildings are all 100% now running on solar. We are almost all buildings have LED lights. So we tend to upgrade these things, and we have the largest solar plant, I think in Hartford now, about 600 kilowatts of solar plant between all our buildings. So my point is that that's kind of the work that we are planning to do with this building. So first is to just stabilize the building, and then help some of the folks that are there. There's some amazing nonprofits in this building. And I would like to, with Workforce Development Board, our piece of the pie, there's some really good nonprofits that are here. and they would love to have a landlord that can stabilize it and make the building better. I'll take any questions now.
Thank you, Max, for that. 35 years, it's been a long time of investing into Hartford. And I would say that I believe that most of your employees on your headquarter location, Western Street, is our majority of Hartford residents, if I'm not mistaken. So that is phenomenal. And thank you for that and believing in Hartford. Any questions from my colleagues?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Aaron, the original agreement that was passed in 2019 was not signed, we went through pandemic COVID. So again, could you just refresh my memory? What was the original agreement and what is it now that you're proposing that's different?
Sure. So the original proposal only focused on the tax liens from 2010 to 2017, I believe. And it also did not include, we added the benefit of the existing rent tenants in the second round. And so those are probably the two major changes. We did work with Mr. Qatari to extend the payment a bit, but there is a first payment that's due at the time of closing. I should also clarify that with the tax lien sale, we're really just selling the tax liens. The actual action to foreclose on the tax liens does fall to Mr. Qatari. So we've also put in this new one that he has 60 days to A, enter the agreement with the city for the sale of the tax liens, and B, to also start the foreclosure process. And I think that was those were the two major changes. Just COVID really kind of impacted everyone. And because of that, because of the back taxes that continue to accrue on the property, Mr. Qatari had made the request to us. And so we worked with him to come to this new proposal to move forward.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Welcome.
Councilman Beer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Howard, would you just speak to the clawback provisions in this, if you would?
Sure. So the restriction, the restriction is for the period of 5 years that Mr. Qatari is not permitted to sell, resell, or sell the tax liens or to sell the property acquired through foreclosure within the first 5 years, because he is getting the discount on the sale of the tax lien. So Mr. Qatari has made a commitment to be an owner in this property for 5 years. However, after discussions, I will say that there is opportunity for Mr. Qatari to bring more tenants. And so part of the clawback, we didn't want to limit his ability to actually promote future development of the site, in the sense of if he needs to make investments in the property, bring other light industrial tenants to the space. And so in this new portion, we added some restrictions in a positive way that just say, we are actually encouraging him to go ahead and do those things. And we still have the ability to review what he's proposing to do, but he has to remain at least 51% ownership in the property over that 5-year period. If he does not do that, the clawback is still in place, where he'll be expected to go ahead and pay the full amount of the overall tax liens as a penalty if that were to change in the first 5 years of this process. And that was, I believe, a request that actually was made by council to include that in the 2019 resolution previously. So that has remained the same.
Thank you.
Welcome.
If this has been already said, forgive me, but what terms of this have changed, or is everything the same?
So the two primary changes is we're adding 2 years in the tax liens, and we're also requesting that there be a benefit to the existing tenants at the property. So they're freezing their freezing the rental payments for the next year in a way to support the nonprofits and the tenants that are currently in the building. And then, like I said, the only other piece that's a little bit different would be encouraging him to make investments, to make improvements to the property within the 5 years. If he's to do that, he needs to continue to own the property at least by 51%, and the approvals are in place in order for the city to agree with that.
Okay, and thank you for that explanation. What's the occupancy rate of this building?
Max, can I defer to you to kind of fill them in?
It's about 50% today.
50%, okay.
And we are not sure about the COVID situation, right? How many people will be able to come back from an office perspective? That's the big issue. Just like downtown, we are going to face the same issue here as to how many people will actually come back.
So that's really, because I drive by that property almost every day.
Like this morning, there was only 22 cars I counted this morning when I passed the building.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to guess, whether the number of cars on the lot is dictated because of COVID still. Then a lot of the organizations are not fully back in the office.
That's correct. And we anticipate that there will be some attrition that's going to take place. So at least for first, I foresee that at least for first 3 to 4 years, this building will make a loss, a significant loss, just to keep the lights on.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions?
Through the chair, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Kasari for always investing in Hartford. And I mean, clearly as part of this presentation, yet another type of reinvestment. You're going to be eating a lot of costs, but you know, in terms of long-term, really adding to the footprint of the city and to the vibrancy of our community. So we appreciate you and what you do. And also in reference to hiring, as part of your hiring process, hiring folks that are part of the reentry community who are returning citizens. So we appreciate that. So I just wanted to note that for the record.
Thank you.
Also, can I just also add, Mr. Kotari, that our own Hartford Public Television station is in that building, and they're also a nonprofit. So being able to freeze the rent for a year, it really helps a lot of the nonprofit. I believe there's a few nonprofit organizations that are in the building. So I commend you for, you know, working with them over the next year or so, you know, helping them to maintain and being there and, you know, keeping some kind of semblance going on in that building. And also to thank you very much for your years of service. I would say years of service to the city, because I remember when you just started with the hardware store on Main Street North, and you've expanded. Majority of your workers, your staff are from Hartford, and they do compliment and do enjoy working for you. So that says a lot for an employee in the city, employer in the city. So I want to thank you very much for your commitment to the city, as Councilman Bermudez has stated.
Thank you for your kind words.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question about the building. Are you going to make this building solar? Add solar panels in the building?
Absolutely. So first thing, like within, as soon as either the foreclosure happens or we come in agreement with but the day we take control of the building, first thing we're doing is upgrading the lighting, because these folks have lighting from the pretty old times. We're going to make it lighting to reduce the electricity bill. And the second thing is we are exploring about making the building solar, 100% solar. Yes.
Okay, and another question. I remember before the last council took up this item regarding the taxes, there was talks about far as the railway, and because this is right next to the railway, if there was going to be any type of conversation with the state and federal government about access to the back of the building for any type of cargo passage, or creating some type of stop basically for going into the downtown area, or making it a stop to go into the neighborhoods.
I think the community in that area is really looking forward to it. This is a little bit bigger than my pay grade in the scheme of understanding what DOT is going to do, but clearly the community wants that, and I think there's a real need for it. We would do what is, you know, right by what makes sense for the community and for the building. We'll make sure that but you're absolutely right. It's right next to rail. There's actually a very good chance that you could do a stop there.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking over the resolution, and I guess this is a question for Ms. Howard. In the last resolution, Mr. Nelson made reference to a 90-day provision, and that was built right into the resolution that had to be signed within 90 days. And I heard Ms. Howard say earlier that this one has to be signed within 60 days, and within 60 days after that, action has to be taken on foreclosure, but that language is not in the resolution. And I guess I'm just asking, should the language be in the resolution, or is it somehow implied in here and I just missed it?
It's in there. Oh.
So it's definitely in, we did have Mr. Qatari did sign a letter of interest. So we had him sign an LOI, and the 60-day term is included in the LOI, which is consistent. It may not have made its way directly. I'll just double check.
It is on the second page, right above the signature, terms of agreement.
Of the resolution. I think the point that Councilman Gale is making is it's just not in the resolved. We do reference the LOI that is dated, and it is in the LOI that he has 60 days.
Oh, I think my packet perhaps didn't include the LOI.
Yeah, mine's didn't either. So maybe that part didn't come over.
I can happily share that for you. I can.
That would be great. So it's taken care of because it's in the LOI.
Yeah, I don't think that reached us.
Okay.
So for me, my limited knowledge base. So are we saying then, since it is in the LOI, it's then kind of the resolution covers that? I don't understand how those two work together.
So, and I'm going to possibly let Howard jump in here, but in the be it resolved, we do actually reference the LOI that was signed and executed with Mr. Qatari dated March 24th, 2021 in the resolved. So anything that was executed in that, the agreement that we would enter into with Mr. Qatari going forward, going into closing would have to be consistent with what was agreed to in that LOI. Which is, it's 60 days.
I'm sorry, Aaron.
That's okay.
So through you, Mr. Chair, what I would recommend is, I think the resolution assumes that the agreements that get entered into will be consistent with the LOI. What I would do is in your committee report out of this item, if you're favorably disposed, to just have the LOI attached to the resolution. So when the full council considers it at your next meeting, the whole package is there.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Any other clarification or questions?
Okay.
Right.
No, makes sense to me. Okay. I'm good.
The chair entertain a motion.
Move to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation with the understanding that the LOI will be attached to the resolution at the time that we enacted at council.
Second.
By Councilman, properly second by Councilwoman Bermudez, to move this item back to the full body with a favorable recommendation, understanding the fact that the letter of intent will be attached to this committee report for the full council to review. Any discussions on this matter? Any discussions? Any discussions? Hearing none, all in favor of this item, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposals? Any abstentions? Hearing none, seeing none, the ayes have it. This item is passed.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Good partner. Okay, in the spirit of time, the chair will entertain a motion to postpone the rest of the items.
Motion to postpone the rest of the items.
Second.
Motion to postpone the rest of the items has been made by Councilwoman Surgeon. It's been seconded by Councilwoman Bermudez. Any other discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any abstentions, any opposals? Hearing none, seeing none, the ayes have it. These rest of the items that were not called will be postponed to the next committee meeting. Thank you all very much. For those that are viewing us, please stay tuned for our public
hearing.
Let's take 1 minute. That will be chaired by Councilwoman
Rossetti.
Thank you so much. Continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.